Welcome back, everybody. This is Fish to Fortune, the poker challenge where I'm starting at the bottom stakes on ignition and trying to get to the top. I'm currently up $12 with a bankroll of $62 sitting in my ignition account right now, so got a long way to go. Lately, we've been kind of sun running these last two sessions, as you'll see. I'm hoping that this isn't all luck, but it definitely kind of feels like this session we got lucky. It was a tricky session where we spent most of the time under the 100 big blind buy-in that we started with, but by the end, in the last couple of big hands, we made it happen, and we didn't quite double up, but we ended up with a almost $4 profit on the session, almost 80 bigs in just a little over 40 hands, which is a pretty good result, I think. So let's get into these hands, and I will let you know what I was thinking. And we're going to start with an ace-queen offsuit, which is a hand I'm happy to be playing, but here at Ignition these are anonymous players, so even if I had a HUD, I wouldn't have a great sense for how my opponents were playing yet. So I'm going to be a little cautious here at the beginning, throw out just a 2 big blind, and I get the call, and I land top pair, which is great. The ace is probably a little scary, but I'm loath to just check around. So I lay out a 1 big blind bet, quarter pot, and that unfortunately gets our opponent to fold, but I'm not going to complain about taking down even a small pot. The next hand, which comes right after, is a Jack-3 offsuit, and this is a hand I wouldn't normally play, but what ends up happening here is the action folds around to us in the small blind, and when it does that, I am happy to take a stab for 1 big blind and see if I hit something, and we hit middle pair. I check this back because I've only got a pair of 3s, and I want to see if my opponent has anything, and he checks it again, so we see the turn, and it doesn't seem like a big scary card to me, so I'm willing to bet minimum bet a big blind here, 5 cents, and that ends up getting the pot down for us again. So kind of a nice way to start this session, but it does not stay that way. Unlike the last couple sessions, I don't have a single major takeaway from this session other than to continue looking at my bet sizes, like I mentioned in the previous session, where I either end up scaring people out of pots or I end up putting myself in bad situations with my bet sizing. But in this session, I do think I did at least a little bit better tightening up my leaks that I do have in the small blind, where my happiness to come in for any pot at all is being tightened up to really only when it folds around to me. We're at our next hand here, which is an ace-6 of hearts. Not quite as good as ace-5, but I think you can be pretty aggressive with this one, so I'm happy to call a 13-cent bet. Perhaps you could argue I should have 3-bet this one, but I just decided to make the call. And we get bet into again at 15 cents, and with only a slight hope of a flush draw, I don't have any straights, I don't have any pairs. I'm hoping for, I've got quite a few outs here, but I didn't have anything there, and I didn't want to be betting big when I didn't have anything at all. I think I made the right call there to fold. We have 1 dead hand, and then we get a pair of 3s. And 3s is one of those hands that you have to be pretty careful with. I'm beginning to learn, because although it's nice to have a pair in your hand when you start, and you might think that puts you ahead in a lot of cases, because it's such a low pair, it's pretty frequent that someone else will pair on the board, and that puts you kind of out of luck. So with these low pocket pairs, you're really hoping for a set, and you're only going to hit a set like roughly 12% of the time, which makes it not something you want to bet big on. And when we do get this flop, we see 6-10 queen with 2 hearts. That's really not a good flop for this hand. And because I have a pair, I make a call here again for 3 bigs, and we see the jack on the turn. And somebody's got something here on this. It's not just a pair of 3s. That's not going to win this pot. But it checks around. We see a 5 of hearts. It doesn't really change anything though. If anybody bets, I have to fold, and somebody bets. So I fold. And I think that ends up being the right decision here. Somebody had queen 5, so like I suspected, somebody had one of those face cards, and I wasn't going to make it out of that pot with my money. I would love to know if you think I should have gotten out of that hand sooner. It's pretty easy to get sticky with a pocket pair, and upon reflection, it would be reasonable to suggest that I was too sticky with just a pair of 3s. But I know it can win sometimes. If someone has ace-king, they're not aligning with that board either, and you end up winning. So but you gotta put somebody on ace-king to want to make that bet, right? So I think probably should have folded even earlier than I did, but I'm glad I didn't go to showdown with that. So now we're down about 6 bigs on the session already. We're not even 15 minutes into the session, and we're starting to go down. Now we get to king 9 offsuit here on the big blind. I'm not super aggressive with king 9 off, but I'm happy to make a call and see a flop with this. We go 3 ways to a flop, and we get top pair. So I think I'm doing pretty good here. Happy to put out third pot. Seems like a reasonable bet. And our opponent here puts out 30 cents, and I find it difficult to go anywhere with top pair, knowing that sometimes these players can get pretty aggressive, and we get bet into again at 36 cents. And this is when I start to get the feeling that he's probably got a set, or at least something better than just a pair. And I'm struggling to make the decision to stay in or fold, but I gotta make the fold here. I just had a feeling that he had something better. We wouldn't have made a flush anyway, so all we would have had is a pair. Probably should have taken that, but I don't mind that fold for me right now. It is probably a leak of mine that I can be folded off of top pair with, to be honest, what are relatively small bets. I mean, 7 bigs into a pot that was already good size. It was roughly like a half pot bet. I mean, I probably should have taken that, but if I took that and then lost, I would probably be kicking myself and telling myself not to take it because that guy was betting so aggressively. And since I don't have a great sense of each of these players when I'm playing these games against anonymous players, unless I've had a long session with them, it just made sense to me to fold. Then we get into a nice suited Broadway here with Queen Jack of Hearts. And I'm going to be a little more aggressive here with 3 bigs, opening bet. I get 1 caller, heads up. And we get deuce 5 deuce, rainbow. Not loving it. Not loving that flop. Check it back. Now we've got 2 pairs, 2s and 5s. I would say that counterfeits, but he very likely could have a higher pair than a 5 if he called me. And then the 4 of spades really doesn't change anything. and we lose to king 3. And he just had a higher kicker than us, and I don't hate that. I don't hate how I played that hand at all. That's just sometimes how it goes. And now we're down 20 bigs already. We got a ways to go. We end up being card dead for a while, and it's important to remember that even when you're down and you're starting to feel that itch to make something happen, that you gotta stick to hands where you can actually make something happen with some probability. If you have too many hands where you've got junk like 7-3, let's say, and you think I gotta make something happen, and you put in a bet, you're just bleeding yourself out faster. You can't be doing that. No matter how many times you see something come up in those community cards, or I would have had a pair, I would have had 3 of a kind, I would have had whatever. Can't be doing that. And so I'm at least happy with myself for sticking to the hand quality here and not trying to make something happen. Being down only a fifth of a buy-in isn't too bad. It's not enough to necessarily tilt most people, but still, being the newbie I am to poker, I'm happy with myself for that. But at least having this period of dead cards is giving me a little bit more sense for how my opponents are playing around me, which can help in the future, but I have to admit I probably didn't take full advantage of here in this session, and you'll see that later. Our next hand that we play is an ace-7 offsuit. Not amazing hand in my opinion, but it folds around to us in the small blind, so happy to take a stab, check it around, chance at a straight draw here. So I bet 5 cents, see if I can get my opponent here off, and he decides to raise to 10 cents, and that really has me thinking if I made the right decision. And I make the call, and we just end up with a pair of 4s. So check back. It takes me a while to admit that I need to check. I don't think I can bluff on a 4 here, and so with the story I've been telling with my playing in this hand, I have to make the fold here, but I make the call, and we lose to a pair of 3s and a pair of 4s. Not amazing play. I really ought to have folded. Now we're down $1.41, and I'm not feeling too happy with my play, especially after a hand like that, where I've had a couple of hands now where I'm saying to myself immediately after I make a bet, oh, that was a mistake, should have folded. Here we get king-queen offsuit, so at least we can play this hand, put in a raise, get called, king-queen-jack, with a 9. If we just get the 10, we have a straight, and I put in a bet and we get a fold. So made a little bit of money, and we would have had the straight. Oh well, sometimes that happens. And we're going to run dead for a while again. And this is just poker variance for you guys. Like, sometimes you're just not going to have the cards to play. And like I said before, you have to be disciplined enough to not try to make something happen when you don't have anything. You need at least some leverage to really be playing something in these cash games. This isn't a tournament where you have, I'll say, limited time. You're playing with your opponents, trying to knock them out. Maybe you're trying to get in the money. You need to be a little bit less predictable. It's not quite the same environment, and it changes how you play. Not that I've played a tournament yet, but from what I know about poker. So here in the cash games, I just want to stick to hands that I know I have a positive expectancy. Those hands end up being pocket pairs of almost any type and suited connectors, mostly of face cards, and maybe 10s up to 9s. You get the couple that dips down to 8s or 7s, and that's kind of it for the hands that you really should be playing aggressively, and then you vary it a little bit based on your position. Here I am with pocket 7s, and I'm happy to be kind of aggressive with pocket 7s, and it just gets us the blinds. Oh well, no luck. Time to run dead some more. Nothing to be done about not having cards to play. That's just how it is sometimes. But we're going to come up soon on the two hands that make us this session. Starting with Ace 9, which is a pretty good hand. And I get pretty aggressive with it. So we get top pair, no spades. So all we have is top pair, and our opponent bets into us, and I raise him up. I said it's can't be too passive here. I've got top pair. Now there's jacks on the board, so I'm a little worried he's got a jack. And I still got top pair though, so I make the call, and now you've got the diamond flush draw. And I'm actually proud of myself here because I managed to get the bluff through. I've been playing fairly aggressive, and when you get that diamond, you can sell that you have the flush. And that's what I do. I bet pot, selling that I've got a diamond flush, even though all I've got is a pair of aces. And we get it through. The guy goes into the tank for a while. He has to think. And this is how I know I'm selling the flush. Because if this was something else, he might have either folded faster or called. But we take down the pot with a bluff that we got through, and I'm pretty happy with myself that I realized I could sell the flush there, and I got it through. So now we're most of the way through what ended up being an about 45-minute session, and I'm still down for the session. Definitely want to try to get back to at least even, and I'm sitting through a bunch more dead cards thinking to myself, well, how am I going to get there? What kind of hand am I going to need to get up? And really, I'm just thinking about getting back to that $5 and calling it good there. But we end up getting pretty lucky here in the last hand that we end up playing for the session, which is pocket 6s. Another pocket pair, but kind of low to be as aggressive with as I was, and we end up getting saved by the river. So here comes pocket 6s for the last hand of the session. And we're on the button, so can really take advantage of it here. It's part of the reason why I was able to be more aggressive, was being on the button. And I'm not going to just limp in with pocket 6s. I want to be a little more aggressive, especially when I know I got to come back almost 20 bigs. And we get 2, 4, 7. This is a pretty innocuous flop. So I'm happy to come along here. And I just make the call after being aggressive on pre-flop, and then we get the 6. And I'm just focusing on the fact that I have trips, but what's really happening here is this is a fairly connected board, and if someone has 3, 5, 8, they're getting real close to a straight. And that's what player 5 is getting to. And instead of just calling here, I put in the raise. And I'm glad I did, because that knocks out players 1 and 2 here, who would really have hurt my possibility for extracting my EV from this hand. Like, straight beats 3 of a kind, so, not that I realized it. And opponent goes all in with 5-8, and we get the 7 on the river for a full house to take that pot home, which was incredibly lucky for us. Definitely got saved by pulling that 7, because something else had to pair on that board for me to walk away with that pot. It was a fairly well disguised straight, 5-8. I really didn't expect somebody to be coming in on my opening bet with 5-8 offsuit, but so be it. So that puts us up almost $4 on the session, bringing the P&L up to $15.93, which is fantastic. And I definitely think I'm sun running, because at 71 bigs per 100, that ain't realistic. Even at these micro stakes, that's not realistic. We've got a pretty small sample here at 265 hands, so I can expect that number to come down. But we only got $14 to go until I'm willing to let myself try going up 1 stake. And when I do that, I'm going to have to increase my target bankroll level from 10 buy-ins to at least 12, probably 15 buy-ins, I think, to keep it reasonable and to keep us with a reasonably low risk of ruin. So that's the Fish to Fortune challenge so far. That was a pretty decent session. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the last hand as much as I did, and I look forward to talking to you next time.